The only thing we know we could really sink our teeth into, even though there's nothing happening, and make something out of nothing, would be the Philadelphia Eagles, of course.
Well, yeah.
So we bothered Mike Kaye on his vacation. We woke him up because, he sleeps in now that he doesn't have to be down there on a daily basis covering practice. At Mike_E_K covers the Eagles for NJ.com, co-host, of course, of the No Huddle Show as well on Twitter. Mike, Harry, Mayes, Eytan, Shander, we appreciate you interrupting your vacation to talk a little Eagles, even though there's nothing actually happening with the Eagles.
What vacation? I'm sitting here glaring at my computer and hoping that something of note happens, like a former Eagles player gets traded or signed somewhere else, or Rolando McClain comes out of retirement, which actually just happened, which is kind of interesting.
Nice.
But, I'm here for you. So what you got for me?
Well, that's the thing, Mike. We don't have any angst, again, coming into training camp. It's like, since the Super Bowl, there really, has been no angst leading into the season, the off seasons, outside of, drafting more players to help Carson Wentz. There's really no issues, and I'm still having a hard time dealing with it.
Well, I think when you look at their depth overall, it's extremely impressive. But if you want me to give you some angst, let's look at Carson Wentz and his history of injuries and the fact that his backup has thrown 25 regular season passes his entire career, and he's expected to take the place of a former Super Bowl MVP. I mean, I think it's being very understated. Look, Nate Sudfeld's looked great during the preseason the last 2 years. He has shown a command of the offense during those exhibition seasons. He's looked okay during his regular season games. He's only appeared in 3 games and thrown passes in those 3 games. The minimalistic work is a little bit concerning. I mean, the Eagles really didn't give him a ton of competition. Cody Kessler, who I covered in Jacksonville, doesn't throw for more than 12 yards in front of him. So
yeah, he stinks.
Yeah, and Clayton Thorson's had a pretty rough start to his NFL career as well. He was very up and down during the offseason program. So
is that the kid from Northwestern? Is that the guy from Northwestern? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, he set all these records for, participating in more games than anyone ever in the history of the world, but that doesn't really matter. College is different than the pros, and, he has had some trouble with his accuracy. He was picked off by his former college teammate, Godwin Igwebuike. Tried to say that 6 times fast. And in the final stretch of practices, I mean, he's struggled. He's been very on and off. He looks very athletic, but again, behind Carson Wentz, there's not a ton of insurance, and that's what happens when you pay a quarterback what you paid your quarterback. I mean, they had interest in adding a veteran to the fold. It's just the backup market got pretty pricey.
Mike, is there anywhere that you look at outside, and I know depth is going to be difficult to address that, as you just said, and the confidence in Nate Sudfeld, but is there an area of the team right now that you look at ahead of time and maybe preemptively start thinking, if they don't get at least a body, not necessarily an all-pro, but a body, and also in between a pulse, so somewhere between a pulse and an all-pro, at that position specifically there on the field, they're in trouble?
Well, I think they need a punt returner. I know that's not really the flashiest thing in the world, but if you looked at how much their punt return game struggled last year, outside of the one big return by everybody's favorite former substitute teacher, DeAndre Carter, they really didn't get a lot of out of the punt return game, which is weird because they did get a lot out of it with Darren Sproles there, with Corey Clement even as a rookie. And so they've had years of Dave Phipp being able to, add yardage to the offensive, starting position, and they just didn't last year. And that's something they really need to work on. DeAndre Tompkins came in as the guy that was seen as the punt return specialist. They also have Corey Clement returning. There's some guys like Markin Mitchell who have an outside shot at making roster. But really, they don't have a guy who is a genuine, proven NFL punt returner, and I think that could come back to bite them, especially if they suffer injuries to the quarterback or running back position.
Mike Kaye, NJ.com, joining us on the Lighthouse Insurance guest line. Mike, a lot of additions in the offseason to the offensive side of the ball that has a lot of people excited, and rightly so. What aspect of this offense or new addition to this offense excites you the most?
Deshaun Jackson. I mean, not just because he can stretch the field, but what that stretching the field does for everybody else. You know, you're going to get better opportunities for yards after the catch on underneath routes for Dallas Goedert, for Zach Ertz, for Alshon Jeffrey, for Nelson Aguilar. You've got legit speed there. Carson and Jackson had an unreal connection during the offseason program. For two players that had never played together before, they just really seemed in sync. And I think having that deep ball threat is going to make it a little bit easier for Carson to distribute the ball in many different ways. I think you looked at Nelson Aguilar and Torrey Smith and Mike Wallace as deep threats. I mean, Mike Wallace and Torrey Smith were well past their prime, and Aguilar has some speed, but he's not a burner. And I think Deshaun Jackson is a guy that they've been missing since he left. I mean, similar to how LaShawn McCoy was kind of a guy that they missed until they started really making a committee out of this whole running back group. I think Deshaun's going to really light things up if he can stay healthy.
Mike, I thought, and I misremember things all the time, I thought somebody asked you that on Twitter in a similar capacity, and you said Malik Jackson. Was it a different type of question that you answered with Malik?
You asked me about offense.
I asked about the offense.
Oh, the offense. Okay, so I missed offense.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I missed off. I thought I heard team. I'm sorry, that's my fault. If you look at the bigger picture of the team, does Malik trump Deshaun, or are you still with Deshaun?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so, again, another guy covered in Jacksonville. If you want to talk about a guy who's going to open things up for the pass rushers around him, similar to how Deshaun is going to open things up for the receiving game, Malik Jackson's an elite pass rusher from the interior. You know, he has had his rough moments against the run. That's why he was partially why he was benched in Jacksonville. They also drafted a first-round pick, Taven Bryan, to take his place, who's much cheaper. Obviously, Malik Jackson signed a $100 million deal when he first got to Jacksonville, so that was eventually going to catch up to him. Got 3 years out of it. Whatever, they moved on. This is a massive signing in the NFC East because what Malik's going to allow you to do is get Cox one-on-one with pass protectors, because you're going to have to pick your poison, and you're not going to double, you know, the one technique, the nose tackle, every single time. So I think he's going to free things up for Timmy Jernigan. I think he's going to free things up for Fletcher Cox. I think you're going to be able to, you know, stunt with Brandon Graham and Derek Barnett and Vinnie Curry and Josh Sweat, and I think it makes the defensive line that much more athletic.
How about this secondary, Mike? I mean, you know, it wasn't before too long where we were like, you know, hey, we don't have enough cornerbacks. Now they seem to have, you know, some young guys really stepping into some roles, and they look like they found a player in Maddox. What do you expect out of Sidney Jones? He's a guy to me that I'm really curious to see if he can make that next step, because a lot is expected of him. You know, especially when he was drafted. I know they got him in the second round, but we were told that he was a top 15 in the first round talent.
I mean, he definitely was coming out of the draft. And if he can stay healthy, he's got the potential to be the most talented guy in that secondary. The big if is if he can stay healthy. So he looked good during the offseason program. I still think Maddox is a little bit ahead of him as far as where he is in the pecking order. I think Ronald Darby's the number one corner on this team. And I would expect if Jones can stay healthy and be productive during training camp, he could push Jalen Mills out of the starting lineup. I think you could see a nickel look of Darby and Jones on the outside, and then Maddox at nickel.
Mike, I know you don't have a lot of time, so real quick, on your way out, as you're looking and staring for other former players to be traded, or Eagles to be traded, or somebody to come out of retirement, are you watching any good TV? Do you have any time for that?
I'm watching a lot of Disney Junior with my 6-month-old son, so that's pretty much the extent of it. I mean, I'm watching Big Little Lies, but I don't know if you could call that really good TV anymore with the way it's gone the second season. But yeah,
what about Stranger Things? I'm struggling through the second season of this.
Okay, so You're in the second season, or are you in the third season?
No. I'm in the second season, so please don't spoil anything for me. I've been really good online, not tweeting a lot about it because I know that there are people just waiting to spoil stuff for me.
Yeah.
The third season's a little slow to start off, but it ends very, very well. So if that's like the light at the end of the tunnel for you, keep going. It's an interesting show. Especially if you like 80s nostalgia.
Yeah, I feel like I'm kind of trapped between an 80s museum and a story that, I hate to say it, but has good acting. That might be like season 2. I was disappointed so far with the writing in season 2, but I thought that season 1. Here's what I would say: it's kind of like The Wire, where I feel like season 2 has been ripped unfairly, but at the same time, I'm not locked into it like I was season 1.
Yeah, that's fair. All these shows go. Boardwalk Empire, which I think is the most underrated show in the history of HBO.
You're killing me.
We have a
You're
big problem.
killing me, Mike.
Yeah, we got a big problem.
All right,
you don't like the show?
Eytan hated it.
See, this is the thing. We need to have. We're setting this whole thing up. We're going to have Mike on weekly when the season comes back, courtesy of NJ.com and us here at 97.3. And it's more than, us, like we can't just talk Eagles for 10, 13 minutes.
We break into a rash if we go too long with sports.
So now I think this needs to be a long play. Like, I'm not going to convince you in 36 seconds, and you're not going to convince me in the opposite. But I love the fact that we now have a battle, and lines have been drawn here. I think it's the most overrated HBO show of all time.
People didn't even know it was on. What do you mean it's the most overrated show?
As soon as they killed Jimmy after season 2, the show was out.
Well, but to be fair, spoiler alert. Geez.
Right.
The first 2 seasons, the first season of Boardwalk Empire is better than the first season of Game of Thrones, in my opinion.
First season, as much as I dislike the show following season 2 of Boardwalk Empire, I will not fight you hard on that. I won't. I will say that you're on to something there. And that's probably why I was so disappointed. Real quick, I don't want to go down this big rabbit hole, but I'll just explain to you my biggest frustration with the show is that it took 4 or 5 years, however long it took, to put Michael Shannon and Eli Buscemi's brother in the same room together. That was masterful chemistry that we had to sit 4 or 5 seasons through to get.
I agree with that. That's fair. That's very fair. And I think
Just
Shane
progress on both
Stedman
sides.
and Michael Shannon are incredible actors. So I agree with you there. That's fair.
All right, so no panic with the Eagles.
Nope.
Strong on Boardwalk Empire, and you're stuck watching Disney. That's pretty much the sum up right now of Mike Kaye's vacation.
Pretty much. But before I go, let me give you guys a sleeper for the season, and you're going to hear about it later. Josh Sweat. This guy is in like the main event, the Jimmy, as it were, of not Boardwalk Empire, but of the Eagles study rooms. This guy had an incredible offseason program from everybody I've talked to. A lot of people are worried about that 4th defensive end job. I think he's going to run away with this.
All right. There you go.
Awesome, Mike.
Keep your eyes on Josh Sweat. Training camp just 13 days away.
Thanks, brother.
Thanks,
we appreciate
buddy.
you.
Thanks for having me.